overpower that thing that has had power over me.
Wow. God, I love that idea of you have to build your appetite for it.
You have to. Yeah, you have to be hungry for who you want to become. And the way that we become hungry for it is we start to see it, right? There's this a scripture, right, that says to write the vision and make it plain. Why do we write the vision? It's not just write the vision, but make it plain. You got to see clearly who it is you want to become. What does she look like? What does she talk like? What are her thoughts? Who are her friends? I have to see this clearly, because when I see anything that contradicts it, I recognize that this is an opponent. This is opposition. This is a threat against my destiny. And so if I can see it clearly, then I can begin to become that person that I have seen in this vision.
A threat against my destiny. I want everyone to put that on a post-it. That's so powerful, because I love having words like that, so that when something happens, it triggers a thought that then empowers me to move forward. And so the idea of really creating that appetite so that when you see it, you know it's there. And then to the point of that you were making is that if someone's then pushing back and they have expectations that don't actually feel right to you, or you end up finding yourself people pleasing and doing things that don't resonate, I think what you're talking about, right, is when you break it down, you do the work that you just explained, these moments then are highlighted and you don't get in perpetual motion of doing the things that other people want you to do instead of going inwards.
There's a flag on the play, right? Sometimes when we're trying to break out of people pleasing, or we're trying to break out of living up to other people's expectations, we're afraid that it's going to damage their relationship. And so we allow them to believe that a lesser version of us exists. And then we shrink to become that lesser version of who we are. And we walk away frustrated because we didn't have the courage to say, I actually disagree with that, or I actually think there's a better way of doing it. And so we're inwardly frustrated. Everyone else is happy. And part of the way we begin to break out of that is to begin to really recognize that there I go again, flag on the play. There I go again, allowing people pleasing to control the moment, allowing expectations to keep me from moving in the direction of what I think would be best. And the more that there's a flag on the play, the more that you begin to think about intervention. I believe that this is an opportunity now more than ever for women to become serious about the patterns and routines that we get stuck in. And the reason why we get stuck in them is because at some point in our life, it may have been true. These friendships did fit. This relationship did work this way. But now I have changed, life has changed, responsibilities have changed, but this dynamic hasn't changed. And the greatest gift we can give anyone we are in relationship or partnership with is the gift of who we are now, even if that means abandoning who they once knew. And I want to help you introduce who you are now to those people who you want to continue to walk out life with. This isn't the kind of book that's like, burn every bridge and burn your life down. I don't believe that it always has to be that way, but you owe it to yourself and you owe it to them to constantly reintroduce who you are, what it is you need, what is no longer true, and to ask them in exchange for the same thing.
So how did you do that yourself then? Because let's go back to the moment where you are finding yourself depressed, you can't get up metaphorically or, even physically, and you've done such a beautiful job of putting these power moves in place so that you end up finding a guy who really freaking loves you for you, and you don't seem to then compromise who you are. So if you don't mind breaking those moments down of like, what are those things that were actually keeping you? So you said fear. I assume judgment. I mean, being young and getting pregnant, especially when your father is so well known, letting go of those judgments, letting go of those expectations, picking yourself back up, and then identifying who you really are.
Okay, that's a journey. It started, there was one thought that changed my mind, and it was in the middle of, I was in a toxic marriage at the time, and I didn't even necessarily know that I wanted the marriage to end as much as I knew that I wanted that version of who I was in the marriage to end.
How did you identify that?
I was tired of her. I was just tired of who I was. I was angry. And not just angry, like I enjoyed the anger. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rage. Like it made me feel like who wants to come fight me? Like it was fueling me because I believe it was the only thing that made me feel alive, because I'd become so numb from depression, from shame, from anxiety, that anger was the only thing that made me come fully alive. And I just got tired of being angry or numb. Those were the only two options. I'm either hitting the roof angry or I'm so numb that I'm walking through life like a zombie. And I just felt like I served my time. I served my time. I don't want to keep paying for this mistake. I've seen this movie. I don't want to watch it again. And I honestly felt like if I continue to look for the next anger high, I'm going to end up in prison. I'm going to end up arrested. I may end up actually hurting myself or someone, losing my children. And I wanted something different. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted this. This actually came by surprise for me. All I wanted was to be better than that. And I started following this idea of how can I make a better choice? Just one different choice. Like instead of hitting the roof, I'm going to walk away. And those better choices ended up becoming the guiding light that I really believe unlocked the power that many people experience from me right now. Right now, most of the time people see me like I'm on stage or I'm speaking from the pulpit and they think that that is me and my power. That is really just the summation of my power. I believe that I'm in my most powerful form when no one is looking, when I'm holding on to myself, when I'm searching for the better, when I have found contentment and joy. And it all started with me just thinking, I've served enough time being bitter. I've served enough time being ashamed. I just want to be better. And here we are, figuring out still, what does better look like? But I have to tell you, Lisa, it's not just now that I'm looking for how can I become better. I'm also embracing the idea that better is not just what can I do next. Better is asking myself what would make you better in this moment. And sometimes that's rest. Sometimes it's stillness. Sometimes it's boxing. Sometimes it's preaching. Sometimes it's doing an interview. I've allowed my definition of better to expand. But at first it was just, I want to get out of this.
Oh my God, there's so much there. How, as you're doing that work, right, when you're saying, I just want better, how do you start to then believe that better is possible? Because going back to something you're saying about can't and want, in your book, you say that can't is way more powerful than the word want. And so you didn't get stuck in the, I want something better, oh, but I can't do that. How did you start to believe you can and then encourage yourself to take the actions to then prove to yourself that you can?
I don't know that I believe that I could. I was trying. Like sometimes you don't do something because you know you can. You just do it because it's a better option than what I was doing before. So I would be lying if I told you that like I just knew I could do better. I'm just like, I've tried angry. I've tried bitter. I've tried upset. I've tried ashamed. I'm going to try better and let's see where that lands me. And then better was like, hey girl, I've been waiting on you. And I was like, I'm going to try better. Again, I didn't know that I could. And I think if you're waiting to know that you can do better, then you're never going to discover it. It's literally an attempt. It's what we call faith. Like, I'm going to try this by faith, and then we're going to see what happens. And I keep walking by faith in that way, but I didn't know that it existed for myself, though I saw it in other people. And I would think to myself, well, she found better. You know what I mean? If this person found better and that, maybe their circumstance was a little bit different, but they still found their version of better. Maybe what I need to figure out is, what does my version of better look like? And that was an attempt. And that attempt gave me evidence that I could try it again. And so there's never been a time where the pursuit of I can do better than this has ever left me without any evidence.
So how did you maneuver and recognize that that relationship wasn't good for you in order for you to be able to build your power back?
Well, I think the writing was on the wall for the relationship. There was just like no denying that it wasn't making either of us better. And so that was pretty evident. I think what I was most concerned about is, could I have value outside of a relationship? At the time I had 2 children. I was a single mother. I was still in my 20s. And it just looked like at the end of the day, I don't know what life can look like after you go through this divorce. And am I going to be okay with that was the question I had to ask myself. And I was. I left that relationship, not even necessarily thinking about how am I going to get in another relationship with someone else, as much as I was thinking about how can I maximize my relationship with myself in my relationship with my children. And I was really able to accomplish that. How do I heal? How do I just embrace, this is my truth. There's nothing I can do to change it. I think I was 21, 22 at the time. I've got 2 kids. I've gone through divorce. This is my life. If I don't find a way to embrace it, no one else will. I can't teach them to do it. I can't teach someone else to do it. And so I began that journey of embracing that for myself. I found love in it. I found joy in it. We did the Christmas pictures. I moved home with my parents. I saved up. I bought a house. I'm like, I can live this life and it not kill me. We think it's going to kill us. Like if I have to live on my own, if I have to start over, I think it's going to actually kill me. It didn't kill me to start over. It didn't kill me to hit ground zero. It didn't kill me to have to say, you know what, I messed up. This is my truth. And from that place, it actually empowered me to own all of who I am, even the messy parts. And in owning all of who I am, I was so comfortable in my life that I just started writing and blogging. And the blog is ultimately how I ended up meeting my incredible husband, who I've been married to for almost 10 years now. And I will tell you the scariest part of going from that space of being single with my 2 children and feeling empowered in my journey as a single mother was the fear of losing myself in even a healthy relationship. So we can say we want the healthy relationship all we want to, but then there's a reality of, like, I fought to become me. It did not come easy. I cried for this. In some moments, I bled for this. I worked my fingers to the bone to get here. And the fear of being in a healthy relationship, I'm not talking about repeating the same thing, because some of us are like, miss me, I'll never do that again. But what do you do when someone who has all of the values that you've been praying for shows up in your life? The idea that I'm going to have to let myself go to lay hold of him was frightening for me. And what I recognized is that because I had chosen someone who knew all of who I was and understood that they weren't just getting this broken shell of a girl, but they were getting a woman, that he was not looking to control me, that it was really about partnership. He wanted me to bring the fullness of my power into the relationship. He didn't want me to shrink. He didn't want me to pretend and to hide and act like this demure girl that I wasn't. He wanted who I was. And I had to trust that who I was enough in the context of a healthy relationship, especially coming off the heels of having been in a bad one.
So how did you have that confidence that you wouldn't go back, that you wouldn't end up with somebody that was also toxic again? And then how did you make sure that when you met your husband, that saying all the things that you said, right, that he really respected you and for who you were and that you were the strong woman, that over time, it didn't dissipate? Because that's the problem, is that sometimes, you know, you talk about people who are in abusive relationships. They're like, I didn't know at first. Yeah. They were charming. And obviously your husband's amazing and I've met him. But like there is that worry to some people where it's like, well, what happens in a year from now? How do I make sure that I don't lose myself? And what they do is they put up walls. Yeah. Because they're like, I know what it was like. I'm never going to go back there again. You seem wonderful, but I don't necessarily trust myself to know that when I recognize toxic behavior that I'm going to be able to walk away.
Okay, so 2 things. Part of the reason why I knew I wasn't going back is because I wasn't trying to avoid dating a certain type of person. I was trying to avoid becoming who I was in that relationship. And I think a lot of times we repeat the same cycles because, like, I'm not going to date this kind of person again. Like, if it's got this, the X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to leave him alone. No. I don't want to become her. Who I was again. I don't want to become her. She was afraid. She was insecure. She was angry. I don't want to become her again. And so I am not looking for the signs in a person. I'm looking for the signs in myself. You know, am I nervous? Am I acting irrationally? Am I getting angry all of the time? Because I want to maintain the person who I fought to become in any relationship I move into. Now, having said that, when I first started dating my husband now, I will say even when we first got married, I was afraid of losing who I had become. The key word is I was afraid. So even though I'd gotten to a place of wholeness as a single woman, when I got married, I was afraid of losing her. And so now I was looking at everything he said, did, or asked through the lens of I'm afraid of losing myself. So I got to make sure I stand 10 toes down and don't allow myself to give up too much of myself. And so we could not effectively become a great team because I was trying to make sure that I didn't give myself to him fully because I didn't want him to walk away with the part of me that I fought for. I had to trust that a relationship that has been rooted in love, kindness, wholeness, humility, communication could only work if I wasn't moving from a place of fear. And so, again, I have to ask myself, how would you show up in this marriage if you weren't afraid of it ending? How would you show up in this marriage if you weren't afraid of losing yourself? How would you receive this gift? How would you receive this love? And I became a different person.
Maybe you go to bed at night just dismissing your dreams and saying, no, my life is just fine. But Mahoma, do you actually want to live a fine life? Or do you actually want to wake up every day with utter ferocity and go after that dream or that desire that you absolutely have and you deserve? I wrote the book that gives you the 11 lessons on how on earth you take action even when you don't feel good enough, even when you don't feel you have the confidence. Because I was stuck there, I know how you feel, but I also know how to get out. So go grab my book on paperback, Radical Confidence, that can literally teach you the blueprint that you need in order to snap out of that word just fine. You deserve more. And with this book, you can go out and actually deliver on that step by step every single day, even when that voice in your head is telling you you're no good. Don't listen to it. Grab my book and every day take that one step closer towards that vision of the life that you want. Go to radicalconfidence.com right now and stop dismissing your life as just fine.
I began to say, I need a hug. Can you help me with this? What's your opinion on this? And like that may sound like small potatoes, but for a girl who built her life on being independent, seeking someone else's opinion on something was real challenging. But that was my way of saying, I want to build a life with you that is not rooted in the fear of me losing myself, but is built on the wonder of who we can become if we decide to truly partner together. And I am proud to say that those walls came tumbling down, not without a fight, not without some rubble, but I love who I am in this marriage. And that's why this message is important to me. Because if we are afraid that where I experience power as a single mother is perhaps the only place I can experience power, then we will shun the very things that we actually hope for. But if we believe that power moves, when I move to a new city, when I move into a new relationship, when I move into a new stage of life, maybe I no longer have the children, maybe the children are at school, I'm no longer lamenting the power I once had. I'm searching for what power looks like in this new dimension. And I found the power of being an incredible wife. I think I'm an incredible wife. I think he thinks I'm an incredible wife.
I think he thinks so too.
But I found the power of marriage and partnership and the power of having been a single mother. And it taught me that power really does move. And I hope that I never stop looking for the ways that power can show up, even as life is changing.
I love the idea that there's power in so many different areas. So you don't have to fear losing power in one area if you're able to go, okay, well, how do I be a powerful wife and a mother and a work colleague or business partner or whatever? I love that because if one falls, it doesn't feel like your entire life crumbles.
Yeah.
So then I love that you, with the power and the assessment of, okay, if I lose it over here, where can I build it somewhere else?
Yeah.
And then in the relationship where you even said, like, without some rubble, what does the rubble actually look like? Because I think it's in the mess sometimes where the people can actually see, oh, this is just part of the process, not that I'm bad, something's going wrong or anything like that.
Man, I think that the rubble looked like pride. I think we call it, I guess, stonewalling now. Like I would intentionally block him out. I would shut down. I wouldn't let him know what I was thinking. I would move without him like knowing how I was moving. Like I lived my life as an independent woman, even though I was married. And I didn't take into account the fact that my decisions affect him. because I didn't want my decisions to be controlled by him. And so I missed out on, like, there would be some times where I would make a decision and I didn't talk to him about it. And it was a good decision for what I had to work with, but he has a totally different perspective. And when he brought his perspective in, he's like, well, you know, you don't exactly have to do it that way. You could actually do it this way and it could get done faster. And then I had to be humble enough to tell him, that was a better idea. That was actually pretty brilliant. And I'm so glad that we're married because now I have access to this brilliance instead of seeing this brilliance as an opportunity to control or compete with the way that I am. And then I started noticing, like, he does this for me all the, like, he's always asking my thoughts. He's always asking my opinion. When, like, he values what I bring to the table. I can show him that I value what he brings by the table by allowing him the intimacy of seeing how I think, the intimacy of seeing why I do the things the way that I do. And I believe that it helped us to fortify our marriage, where we weren't just holding hands and cuddle buddies and watching the same movies, but we were actually back to back in this crazy world and really taking into account one another's experiences and vantage points.
God, that's so powerful, because especially if you've done the internal work and you're like, okay, I'm building myself. I was powerless. I'm never going to go back there. And then someone comes along, they've got a better idea than you. Like, that can be threatening.
It is threatening. And then I think because I dealt with so many insecurities about, like, feeling dumb, feeling stupid, a different idea is not just a different idea. A different idea makes my idea dumb in the way that my mind works. And so I have to separate the idea that this different idea didn't make my idea dumb. Sometimes maybe the idea was dumb, but, you know, to be able to say that, like, just because I had this thought doesn't mean that this is a reflection of my worth or my value. So creating space where someone can offer a perspective that doesn't demean my value and worth took unbelievable work. I mean, we're almost 10 years married. I'm probably just now about to get, like, my GED in this program.
And then you're going to go for your master's.
Right. And then I'm going to have to go for my master's because it took a lot of work. And being willing, though, to do that work, to acknowledge it and to acknowledge the negative impact it was having on my relationship helped me to get serious about it. Because I realized, like, I am going to jack this thing up if I don't take it seriously.
Yeah. And I think that when someone